Marian Siwiak. I'm Chief Data Science Officer in Cognition Shared Solutions. I worked with my company quite a few corporations where we implemented either parts of data mesh for some time, and when it was announced by Jean-Marc Degani, we started to connect dots together and creating data mesh in more or less full capacity. So today I will talk about what data mesh is and is not, and about 4 principles. I will skip the kickstarting data mesh in one month. So let's start with what data mesh is not. Data mesh is not a silver bullet. Data mesh is promoted left, right, and center, and I think everybody heard about it and how wonderful it can be when applied. It's currently treated more like a technical solution, while in fact it's a socio-technological paradigm. It's a paradigm which aims at decentralizing ownership of data, and that's when it strives. It's not necessary for everyone. From our experience, there should be 2 and the best 3 parameters or properties of companies to really use the power of data mesh and make the investment worthwhile. The first one is you should have diverse data sources, diverse data environment, multiple systems. That's when investment in data mesh has a chance to pay off, because creating, as we will speak in a minute, decentralized ownership, which requires each of the groups to have access to data scientists, to data engineers, is a trade-off which is worth. The second parameter is high socio-technical complexity. Again, it means that not only your data is in multiple places and you have multiple diverse data sources, but you have multiple teams working on different projects on different data. You have multiple different data owners, and it becomes what we call spaghettification of responsibilities and data pipes. And the third property of the company is complex data needs. If the company is, I don't know, a manufacturing company which does not have complex data needs, and the data consumers, even if there is a diversity of data sources and high socio-technical complexity, if there is limited number of data users and data users, the central team taking care of data warehouse might be cheaper. If, however, you have multiple teams which work on multiple projects, delivering multiple results and using multiple data sources, then thinking of data mesh is worth your time. So let's talk about, I would say, business practicalities of data mesh principles. The first principle is domain ownership. It means that first of all, you need to have some sort of domain structure in your company. This is this high socio-technical complexity. You should have pretty well-defined areas of business which are separate from each other. Then you can assign the ownership of the data to the group which is the closest to the source. To introduce this, there is domain-driven design, and it's beyond the scope of this topic. There are multiple ways of introducing domains into the business. It's connected to deciding on data product boundaries. We will talk about exactly what is a data product. For now, let's assume it's a piece of data which is made available to others to use. We have domain decomposition. We have a method of identifying data use cases and grouping them. And we have some other heuristics. In our experience, what works really well is mapping the process, the business processes, and then checking what data is used in these business processes. In our work, we add the risk management layer. And when we have these three components which align together and create the coherent whole, then we can define business domain pretty cleanly, I would say. It's also, yes?
Yeah.
Dr. Murphy?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he's talking to me. All right. So when defining your domain ownership, when introducing data mesh and as this socio-technological paradigm, it's pretty important to know who you will be working with. And this is a part that we describe in this Kickstart in a month part. When you introduce the data mesh, it's important not only to work with your friends, but work with people who are pretty hesitant towards data mesh, to learn why they are really hesitant, and to invite them, because first of all, they might be right. And second of all, if you will be able to convince them, you will get really good promoters of your new architecture. So principle number 2 is a data as a product. Data as a product needs to be considered on 2 levels. One is technical, which is thrown here. The second one is the layer of this data product governance. And I mean, we will be talking in a second about federated data governance. But when you have this domain that you build, and within your organization, now choose the domain which is as close to source of data, and people within this domain will be responsible for working with this data and making it available to others. From the business perspective, it means that you need to give the obligation about this product description, findability, accessibility to the product owners. They need to adhere to centrally described policies which define how the metadata should look like, what are the access rights to different types of data, what data is sensitive, what data is not. So this is a very delicate balance where people should have some local authority, but they should think about their data as a product for others to use. And they shouldn't necessarily always know upfront what this data will be used for. So they need to ensure that this data is available. Here we get when we worked with Big Pharma, for them, it was extremely important that the data is well versioned. It's not only about the versioning of access points and versioning of APIs, but data itself. And this is really interesting struggle to make this right. So we are moving to this federated computational governance. There are 2 aspects to it. One is federated and the other one is computational. The federated governance, which is probably more interesting from the business perspective, it means this balance of power between the central and local areas of control. The division is pretty liquid, I would say. There are strategic decisions which could and usually should be decided on the central governance level. And then we have policies, we have policy detailing, and then we have implementation. In our experience, depending on the nature of the business, the cutoff between the central governance and the local governance can be set in different points. It's pretty business dependent. There is no silver bullet again. However, some good practices we can discuss. Something that worked pretty well for a couple of our clients is creating a data governance council, which will be centralized. They will monitor business strategy and ensure that the data governance adheres to the business strategy, and they will plan the change management. They will be responsible for making sure that the changes, the high-level changes, are going in the right direction. Then they appoint data governance steering committees, the second body at the central level, and this is the body which is more oriented towards creating policies and nitty-gritty of what should be really ensured from the regulatory standpoint, from the legal standpoint, from the practical standpoint. In example, what centrally supported tech stack would be available for local data product owners, and so on and so on. So this is the central government, which has, let's say, also a little split between the guys that will do stuff and the guys that think about what actually should be done. Then we have the local level, where there should be also pretty high level of independence for data product owners. When they work with data within their domains, they should have more or less complete ownership of what and how they do. What they need to ensure is that when they present data to the outside world, meaning other business domains within data mesh, they adhere to the standards and policies which are centrally decided. And then we have central platform team, which is responsible for the computational part of the federated computational governance. They are overseen by the data governance steering committee, and they ensure the implementation of the platform, which has the capability of automatically checking adherence of data products to the policies. So when there are policies about access rights, these access rights should be enforced on the platform level. If there are policies about data quality, they should be automatically checked. Data quality should be validated from the central platform automatically, and they should be, the new data should be accepted only when it adheres to these policies. When there are other factors which need to be ensured, like ensuring that data contracts and API service levels are ensured, and the versions of service level agreements are still valid. If there are some contracts which are still, let's say, in force, that the data product offers what it's supposed to offer. When you start with building data mesh, it's good to start with defining value statement. We also write about it in our book. It sounds like a bit unnecessary step, like everybody knows what's good and what's not. But we learned that when you have multiple groups suddenly, I don't know, competing for resources, or if there are some decisions to be made, it's good to have the final standpoint, what is worth doing. Conflicts are unavoidable, unfortunately, and if conflict is a strong word, you know, some not always aligned needs of different groups, there should be final say of we do it because it's closer to our value statement, because we defined, and the central body should define what is it that we are working towards. Do we work more towards, I don't know, findability, and we prioritize it over reusability, or the other way around? It's, as I said, in companies, in theory, you can say everything is important. In practice, it's always about choosing some resources. From business perspective, efficiency of resource allocation is important, and there must be a hierarchy of values, and value statements really help in defining these. Then you should create some governance policy. If you start, it's good to start with really something small and simple, so you can implement it fast. And you need to decide on responsibilities pretty early. We noticed that, you know, you can change it, but if you don't do it at the beginning, then managing expectations of central governance and local product owners leads to completely unnecessary conflicts again. Then we have the self-serve data platform. We discussed it. In our book, we show that it can be as simple as a Git repository for data products. So you don't need to think that starting a data mesh requires you huge investment into the central platform. Elements of it can be implemented relatively cheaply and relatively quickly. So when you are starting your journey towards data mesh, what you should start with is creating a landscape map, the method of aligning business processes with data and systems which are required to support decisions within this business process is a pretty good start. You should understand who is really involved in data products, because data mesh is a huge change. You don't want to do it in one go. So you should understand what are your stakeholders' needs. And if you have this complex data needs and diverse data sources, you should analyze which systems you want to start with and which stakeholders you want to involve. Choosing the right people, it sounds obvious, but in my opinion, explicitly noting your priorities when choosing who will be the first to enter data mesh as a pretty complicated project and pretty I would say requiring shift in the mindset, but also style of work is critical. Then you should set up your minimal data governance, develop your minimal data products, and set up a minimal data platform. So this all can be done in a month. As I said, we will skip the details, but this is something that you can do relatively quickly. So I know I'm last or one before last presentation, so I try to keep it short and sweet. What I would like you to remember is that data mesh is a socio-technological paradigm. Treated as only technological solution may deprive you of some of its benefits. The critical benefit from our experience is it's a structure where business is forced to work with data people. And again, it sounds obvious, but more often than not, it's not. It's impossible to derive business value from data if both sides are not in really good relations, good working relations, if they don't work with each other day to day. Data people need to understand the business needs. The business needs to understand the data possibilities and their team ability to process it as well.